Continuing on in what's possible for the Utah energy grid and shifting from the energy storage market to another critical aspect of the energy sector transformation. And we're going to take a deep dive in the Utah electric vehicle and charging network market opportunity and how this broader transformation of the United States transportation network is specifically manifesting in the Utah transportation network. So, this is a forecast of the oncoming electric vehicles out to 2030. There's many different perspectives on this, but this one comes from Lauren McDonald. And what we can see is massive electric vehicle growth coming out to 2030. And it really has begun in 2021. And according to Reuters, US automakers say that they aspire to have 50% of all sales be electric vehicles by 2030. And not only do we have a lot of electric vehicles coming online, but we're getting a much more diverse variety. So up until, really a year or so ago, they've been mostly sedans and a couple of small SUVs. But now we have the whole spectrum of electric vehicles from semis to vans to large trucks and light trucks, and then also equipment for farms and ranches, tractors and UTVs and loaders. And that this massive increase in electric vehicles and much larger electric vehicles, which have a much higher energy capacity and are going to jam in more energy more quickly, is a huge opportunity in the broader sector. And then this also creates a number of challenges. One is, where are all these electric vehicles going to charge? And looking from the national level, there's the National Electric Infrastructure, or NEVI program, which came with the Investment and Jobs Act in 2021, that allotted $7.5 billion that flows down to the individual states with the focus on how do we create an interconnected network. And this is targeting having 500,000 ultra-fast EV charging stations along the nation's corridors to make cross-country travel possible and accessible to all of Americans. And this is looking at 134 interstates and 125 of the major U.S. highways and state roads covering 166,000 miles. So we have a federal organization that's flowing down to the states. And then we can also see a regional market that's responding to this. And one is the Drive Electric USA, which is 14 different states engaging in connecting their individual EV networks. And this is spanning from the East Coast, North Carolina, Virginia, and Pennsylvania through Tennessee, Missouri, Kansas, Colorado, all the way to Utah. And then Utah has the Drive Electric Utah program. So we can see a regional synthesis coming from the East Coast all the way into the heart of the Rocky Mountains in Utah. And then within this critical 7-state regional market, there's the Core West Rocky Mountain Regional Electric Vehicle Program, which is the states then flowing down to the individual cities, looking at how they can create an interconnected EV charging network throughout the Rocky Mountains. And this kicked off in 2020 and is really fast producing into 22 and 23. And one of the city projects within Utah is Utah Clean Cities, which is focused on removing barriers of investment to enable private station development, to identify key infrastructure gaps and develop solutions to deploy charging stations in rural regions to complete these national and regional corridors at the local level. So looking at the Drive Electric Utah program and how this is disseminating into the state transportation network, it's happening all over the state, but one of the exciting areas is called the Utah Mighty 5 EV Road Trip. Really look at our majestic and beautiful Mighty 5 parks of Zions, Canyonlands, Capitol Reef, Bryce Canyon, and Arches to enable electric vehicle transportation for all those wanting to experience the wondrous beauty of southern Utah. And when we look at a wonderful study that was done by Oregon, that really addresses, well, how do you deploy these resources at a state level, and looking at some of the core challenges that this opportunity presents. One, where will all the generation come from to supply these very energy hungry electric vehicles? And then how are you actually going to deploy the energy charging network along with the transmission and generation to meet this huge increase in energy demand? And what this report found is that a lot of the urban areas are more simple because there's such a bigger grid infrastructure and larger capacity. But the problem was the rural areas. And what this report determined is that agrovoltaics within farms and ranches presents the elegant solution to this complex challenge. And the report shows that requiring only 3% of the total land could supply all the power to 86% of rural highway access points throughout the state. So nature.com has a wonderful article, and would encourage anyone to really look at this seminal study that shows the solution is agrovoltaic generation and storage to meet the rural area demand. And from a policy perspective, it would be wonderful for the state of Utah and NGOs to really bring a similar analysis study for the state of Utah so we could better understand the opportunity for agrovoltaic generation and storage systems mirrored with electric vehicle charging stations. So just again, zeroing in within that southern region in the Mighty Five, EV Zion and the Regional Move project is focusing on how do we create an electric corridor from Zion all the way up to central Utah along the All-American Road of Scenic Byway 12. And this area receives over 2.5 to 3 million visitors a year who flow in to experience the wonder of southern Utah. And what we can really understand is they're trying to connect this. There's so many farms and ranches within this region that are perfectly adapted to be able to provide the solution to this challenge. And so as we look at farms and ranches as a critical opportunity, the project example that we're going to show is in Boulder, right on Scenic Byway 12. So I want to really highlight one of the extraordinary potentials that providing public EV charging provides for a farm or ranch who installs agrivoltaic generation and co-located energy storage. And it's unique because when you put in a utility scale solar generation project and a power purchase agreement or a PPA that sells power to the grid in a long-term, say 25-year agreement, that's going to be economically feasible. But one of the use cases of Utah, which has some of the lowest electrical rates in all of the nation, is that maybe that project will receive 3 to, in best cases, 5 cents per kilowatt hour in revenue. And that will be economically feasible and create great economic stability for the farm or the ranch. But as we co-locate public EV charging, now we get a market-based opportunity to really increase revenue into that project, along with providing that solution to the broader challenge of electric vehicle charging. And so when we look at co-locating a public EV charging station, you could see that microgrid receiving 10 cents a kilowatt, 25 cents a kilowatt hour, even 50 cents or $1 per kilowatt hour, because this is a heavily trafficked tourist destination in which all prices experience inflation during the tourist season. Or in addition to maybe charging a higher rate, you could bundle a package. So EVs are going to charge for 15 minutes to an hour. So if the farm or ranch co-locates a farm stand, they can offer their products and services for the farm or ranch. So maybe they offer free charging for someone who wants to go on a agro-tourism tour of the beautiful farm or ranch, or bundling products for the farm or the ranch to give a discount on the electricity and energy that's being sold, but they're buying other products. So this opportunity creates a real market-based solution to really turbocharge the economics of the solar and storage microgrid. And then when we also put solar covered parking, we create protection from the intense summer heat and in southern Utah, and protection from snow and rain during inclement weather. So, want to really look at an amazing study that was completed by NREL, who gets into the economics of the business case of private electric vehicle charging stations. And it's called EV charging and the impact of electricity demand charges. So we can see a huge wave of electric vehicles that are forecasted to come in. However, one of the challenges that's happening for the business case is a lot of those electric vehicles aren't there yet. And then what this analysis breaks down is the cost to charge an electric vehicle in dollars per kilowatt hours, and looks at all of the interest expense, and they look at urban adjacent, and rural locations, and multiple different charging station types, level 1, level 2, and level 3, and all of the costs that are associated. And some of the key factors that make that business use case not viable now is when you put in an EV charging station where you're leasing the land and then buying that power from the utility grid or the macro grid. Because of demand charges and time of use, if you're trying to charge vehicles in the afternoon, demand charges are the amount of energy you're pulling, and time of use is the time of day. It makes up 45% of the expense, and makes this not financially viable at the moment. So along with needing to forecast potential EV demand to meet that market with supply, what happens is when you co-locate with an agrivoltaic generation and storage, you can completely eliminate demand charges and time of use, taking what is financially unviable and putting it completely into the green. And then also, because farmers and ranchers already own the land, you don't have to pay an expensive lease. So this opportunity for farms and ranches to co-locate an EV charging station really makes what is a forecasted financial benefit into an economic reality of today. So we want to take a look at ranch and farm fleet electrification as another critical area to really transform the economic situation for farms and ranches. And here we have a whole spectrum of different electric vehicles that are either here or coming online, from semi-trailers, delivery vans and trucks, pickup trucks, SUVs, sedans, but also tractors and loaders and forklifts and boom lifts, and local electric vehicles like UTVs, and even e-bikes, e-trikes, and trailer systems. And they have a really amazing benefit system. So one, you can reduce fleet expenses and also increase revenue. So switching from diesel to electric can reduce 100% of the fuel and reduce maintenance costs for the fleet. You can also create revenue from public EV charging, which can be more profitable because of no demand charges, time of use charges, and lease expenses. We're totally reducing pollution and emission for the farm vehicles. And this is really critical because of the broader pollution problem. But also, when you look at tractors or some other farm vehicles, anyone who's driven a tractor with an exhaust right in front, it's blowing directly into the farmer or rancher, creating health problems. And then for organic operations who are, really so present to keeping things pure without toxicity, every time we drive the vehicles through the fields or through our animals, we're spewing pollution all throughout and really tainting that environment. So the ability to totally reduce pollution and emissions at the facility level, and then we're going to look at vehicle to grid stabilizing energy storage. All electric vehicles are just large batteries in a vehicle. And even in the best case, electric vehicles will operate 6, maybe 8, 10 hours a day. And if you can get that happening 5 days a week, that's a really successful fleet. So the reality is electric vehicles are sitting the majority of the time, and the large energy storage can be used in concert with a microgrid to be able to support the grid, but also to be able to contribute back to energy storage services. So as we look at vehicle to grid is a major opportunity for integrating ranch and farm electrified fleets. And to take a look at a company within the US who's really leading the innovation of this, it's called Grid Tractor. And Grid Tractor is focusing specifically on a tractor fleet, but the implications of this apply to all electric vehicle fleets. So in this ranch, you can see that the electric vehicles are charging at night, and then the solar generation begins to come online, feeding the grid or the microgrid energy storage. The tractors go out and work as solar generation comes up, come back for lunch or for a break, and the tractors top off their batteries when solar generation is coming in, and all this power is being exported back to the grid. And as the generation is satisfying the facility demand, and then at night, as solar generation begins to drop, the facility switches back over to energy storage, and the tractors can come in and sell their excess power back into the grid or back into the microgrid to be exported to the grid. So this is a really cool example of one vehicle type tractors that's being innovated upon in all sectors of electric vehicle integration. So we want to really break down the economic opportunity of farm and ranch electric vehicle fleet, and we're going to look at two. A larger farm or ranch that integrates 6 vehicles, and then a smaller microgrid example. So in this case, we're going to do a delivery van, heavy duty, and a light size or mid-size pickup truck, a large tractor, a mid-size tractor, and an electric UTV. We pulled just some of the common middle of the range electric vehicle prices, and that totaled $305,000. Currently, many of these vehicles qualify for a federal EV tax credit of $7,500. So that puts a net cost at $267,000. But this is amazing when we total up the energy storage in the electric vehicles. It's almost 3/4 of a megawatt that happens from energy storage that can be used in that vehicle, the grid capacity. And then using a comparison of the expense of gas or diesel, and there's many different variations on this, but we used an average miles or hours driven, and then the equivalent MPG of gas or diesel. And then we set the cost of fuel at $5 per gallon. There's a lot of variability here, but we look at an annual expense savings of $6,000. I mean, $21,000 for all of the vehicles. And then over 5 years, that would represent $105,000 in savings, bringing the net cost of a $305,000 acquisition to $161,000. And then if we look at a smaller fleet of just 3 vehicles with a heavy duty pickup truck, a large tractor, and an electric UTV, it's still 390 kilowatt hours of energy storage from $185,000 total cost, net $170 with the tax credit. And then over 5 years, the operating cost reduction is $37,000, bringing the net cost to $132,000. So electric vehicle farm and ranch is a huge opportunity at the facility level that can be used with vehicle to grid to participate with the microgrid, and then public EV charging co-located along these city, state, and federal programs come in to create an elegant solution to the EV charging and massive influx of electric vehicle challenge that we're currently facing. Thank you for taking the time to watch this section of the Utah Agrivoltaic Storage and EV Microgrid Market Intelligence Analysis. It's my prayer that you found a lot of really valuable knowledge and insights and hopefully inspiration about how you can participate in taking the great state of Utah and transforming it into more abundant, secure, and prosperous future for all Utahns, but how Utah is really a keystone state within the heart of the Rocky Mountains that has the opportunity to really integrate with this incredible 7-state regional market, and how Utah is an economic powerhouse and technological innovation hub can really inform that regional market, the broader United States and the world. And regardless of what channel you're finding this transmission, that you'd be inspired to watch all sections of this market intelligence analysis, which you can find at butterflypower.org. And we would be humbled and honored if you'd give it some love, a like, and share it, specifically with a farmer or a rancher or investors who are looking at investing their capital in ways to create a more regenerative future, or really anyone who's wanting to come and participate in this broad scale, bottom up, inside out transformation of our economy, our energy system, and our environment. And it's just a blessing to be here in this time and to participate in this great and good work. And we are the butterfly generation. It's time to rise and shine.